Today, we're going to learn to go with the flow. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. That's right, it's finally time to document that beautiful Silverflow Elegant that I won out of that auction. I had to pay way too much for this thing, but this is a special piece of Gibson history. Let's learn all about it. To start, we need to talk about chambered Les Pauls. And to document that tale, we need to talk about these things again. The Bantam Elite, and the Florentine series. These things get the asterisk of the first chambered Les Paul. I dispute it though because they technically had these F-holes, so it wasn't a solid top. However, in 1995, the Bantam series was introduced, and then 1 year later, due to a potential lawsuit with Washburn for using the same name on something else, they decided to rename them the Florentine. Now, if you want to learn about this one, you can check out this episode. It's a little bit of an odd duck. It's the Les Paul model, but it's built like a Florentine. It just doesn't have the bridge pickup, and we have a unique tailpiece. The Florentines were really expensive, so to call them a massive success might be a bit of a stretch. So after these guys, we get what I personally consider the first chambered regular Les Paul. It's the Catalina series. So these first started around 1997 and lasted through about 98. Typically, you find some really beautiful colors, like there's a Riverside red, you've got a blue, canary yellow, but there were a few limited editions like this one. It's just straight up ebony. There's also a black pearl, which is a metallic ebony. I've also seen a very dark gray one, but what makes these unique is they're built just like our brother over here, except for we do not have the F-holes on it. It is a regular Les Paul, but we have the introduction of real mother of pearl inlays on our fretboards. We also have the introduction of compound radius fretboards. You get a cool pearloid plastic pick guard, white plastics in general, and a nice big gaudy custom shop logo on the headstock. So 1, 2, and now 3, what I personally consider the most successful chambered Les Paul out of the beginning runs. This is known as a Les Paul Elegant. It basically took the Catalina series and said, hey, instead of doing solid paint jobs, why don't we do fancy exotic tops? So normally when you see these things, they're going to have crazy quilt and or flame. They'll have dual humbucker pickups with a regular setup. The earliest ones still feature that custom shop inlay on the headstock, just like we saw on the Catalinas. However, they did have to change after a few years because there were some complaints that it was a little bit too fancy. But where things start to differ is the fact that we had abalone inlays on the fretboard. Just like all these had weird custom colors and other iterations in it, so did the Elegants. The most notable to me anyway are the Elegant Alloy series, as well as the Flow models. So the Alloy series, they actually have a metal alloy on the outside of the guitar. They made an aluminum, a brass, and a copper version. They definitely weren't made to be played. They really didn't make it out of the prototyping stages. It just became a bumpy finish for the most part. There's not a lot of interest in these things. I just like them because they're weird. All things considered, the Elegants were a success because they were obnoxiously beautiful. But then we've got the Flow models. Now this particular one, I nicknamed it the Mummy. It's not like most Elegants out there, but it's built the exact same way. We just don't have any inlays on our Ebony fretboard, and it had a single P90 for some reason. But why I wanted to show you this one is the finish known as Gold Flow. So Gold Flow here is very rare. However, there was a run of about 50 done up in a Silverflow finish, and that's what we're talking about today. And I had to bid to the moon on this one because it is the only one that I've ever seen that they did it on the back and the sides and the neck too. Usually the Silverflow's just got a black back. And I actually did own one of those. You can see it in my collection recap video. And I always regretted not having enough time to document that one before I sent it on. But hey, now it's okay because I found an even rarer version. This one was made in 1999, so that's the start of them getting rid of the gaudy custom shop logo on the headstock. But I just love the finish all over there because every Silverflow looks a little bit different. Some are attractive, some, let's just say, quite honestly, aren't that good. But I would say the back of this one kind of reminds me of snakeskin. Here we go, an illustrated history of unique examples of the earliest custom shop chambered guitars. Now for here's what comes after these. Out of the custom shop, I would say the Cloud 9 reissues, which were usually a dealer exclusive, is one of the more memorable, but I would say your next logical step is to talk about the Supremes, which were birthed in the year 2003. However, those were not custom shop made. Those were Gibson USA production, and they had the carved back on them, which makes them a little bit different, but still pretty similar to the chambering style that we're talking about. It's not till the year 2007 that Gibson brings chambered weight relief to the Gibson USA lineup. As far as regular Les Paul logos. We're not talking about those double cut ones of the late 90s. However, the custom shop chambering is way different than the later Gibson USA style. The chambers are completely connected, and you can access them from the control plate. So if you were to drop a small ball from right here, it would just go down and you could fish it out your output jack hole if you wanted to. Whereas USA chambering, you can't access the chambers. And in my opinion, I really like custom shop chambered guitars. So even if you're not a big fan of chambering, I still say give them a try. But another cool reason why I had to buy this one is look at this sweet folder it came with the COA. It's like all flamey, it's just a photo. But inside sleeps a very special COA. I mean, you gotta remember, this is very early days of Gibson actually issuing COAs. So to have one documenting and saying it is the only one done in the ALL Silverflow finish makes it very rare. And I'm really glad they kept this around, because usually these big paper COAs, they get filed away and lost forever. And the early warranty cards are cool. They were red before they turned them blue. And nowadays they're just tiny little cards, so we don't even appreciate it at all. But it's all filled out. So to learn more about my new Elegant in my collection, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. But before we do that, we need to have a word from our sponsor, Sweetwater. Sweetwater is a great place to buy your stuff, but it's not just guitars. You can also buy amps, effects pedals, patch leads, whatever you need for general music making. You could even become a DJ if you really wanted to. They've got the gear that you need. And if you happen to be local to their Fort Wayne, Indiana campus, they have tons of events all the time. You just missed Gear Fest, but don't let that shy you away from visiting their great retail location, or they're happy to ship anything to you that you might need. Thank you, Sweetwater, for being a continuous sponsor of my show. And now let's get back to our guitar. And now here she is, all polished up, looking way better all of a sudden. So let's check out these pickups. They're just regular 57 Classics, which is what you would normally find in these. Just has your patent applied for decal. The way you can tell it's 90s is based on the font that they used for that. It's very characteristic. Once you've seen it once, you'll always recognize it. But as is common in these early custom shops, we do not have a long neck tenon unless you're going for a full-on reissue. But the cavities are pretty cool to see because you get the silver flow finish, but mainly the black part. And we can see some vintage buffing compound up there on the edge. Our readings within the circuit, 7.96 k ohms in the bridge, 7.92 in the neck, and the middle just for fun, 3.97. This is another characteristic of late 90s Gibsons. Their nickel hardware hazes over like this. Now, you could buff all that back to a nice shiny nickel. So that's why it's always a bummer if somebody replaces one pickup or something, because it'll just never perfectly match. But thankfully, everything is original here. Here's an example of what it would have looked like new, since that's been on a post most its life. But the back of our bridge says made in Germany, which is era correct. It's towards the end of them using these parts, but it is your regular Nashville style bridge. So not ABR1 post mounted. Then our tailpiece is full weight, and also nice and frosted. Somebody's hand has worn away the nickel coating right there, so if you're wondering if that was replaced, I don't think so. I am a little bit suspicious that this switch tip has been replaced though. I don't think it looks that good. Straight up black kind of clashes with everything else. I think a nice cream or a frosted nickel would pair better with the finish, but I guess it's possible it left the factory like that. I'm not usually one for modding guitars, but I'm gonna leave it cream. I think it looks better. You tell me, cream or black. But we'll take a pan over our finish. There is some checking. Kind of plays peekaboo on you. It's not too extreme on the top, but we do not have a pickguard on this model stocked from the factory. So this will have a two-piece maple top with the chambered mahogany body. We've got the mahogany neck with the ebony fretboard, and there we can see those awesome abalone inlays. When I first got into guitars, I wasn't really sold on abalone. It's something, it just has to grow on you, but certainly unique. But look what I found while cleaning our fretboard. This is why I say you should always clean your guitars, because you couldn't see this until you got the fingerboard gunk. So we all know that this collection was not necessarily stored properly or in the best manner, but there is a small crack in our fretboard, and I can feel some sort of a sticky substance in it, so that likely means it was glued, so it shouldn't spread any further. Do fretboard cracks really affect the value of a guitar? Typically, no. This could definitely be repaired much better. StewMac just recently released a video showing you how to do that. I also saw a small chip by the fret right here. Usually you see that on refretted ebony boards, but we've still got our fret nib, so I'm not suspicious of a refret at all. Now thankfully we don't have any major cracking along our fretboard from fret sprouting, but this should have a compound fretboard radius, starting around 12, ending around 16. But with our usual 24 3/4 inch scale length. Elegant necks are usually on the slightly thinner side. Got a nice roundedness to them. Here it is on the contour gauge. Nice C shape. We've got our Les Paul model silkscreen with our Gibson mother of pearl logo. It's kind of hard to tell, but you've got finish checking all up and down. Now, usually when it's all up and down like this, that can signify that it was exposed to moisture. However, in the 90s, they did have this issue, like they just didn't apply the finish right or something, or maybe there was too much humidity when they were spraying it. So you can't find that usually in the earlier 90s, where the finish will just flake off even if you've stored the guitar properly its entire life. Our truss rod is thankfully in perfect condition, as is our cover. Moving over to the backside, I just love how this is more predominantly darker than the front. And that's why not only is it cool that we've got Silverflow top, back, and sides, all that stuff, but it looks fantastic on the back. Here's a look at our toggle switch cavity. But here's our control cavity. You're going to see we have mix-matched pots. This is the time period when they start to switch into these Gibson branded ones. However, they were still using these CTS dated ones, probably just trying to use up old inventory. I wish they would go back to these because I like being able to date the guitar approximately using these. This is 1997, very late in production. So that lines up with this guitar being somewhere in 1998. But just like I was telling you earlier, these chambers are all connected together. And it goes all the way through. Imagine just a big center block right here, and then all this is chambered out around it, so it is all connected. But you still have something for your pickups to screw into, and most importantly, your bridge and tailpiece. And then you'll have a little bit of a bump right here. Now, despite these things being chambered, they're honestly not all that light, and you can find some incredibly nice quilty and or flamed mahogany backs in this era. They're heavy, but they're really cool. But again, depending on your lighting situation, you can see lots of finish checking, like there's one right there, and then there's one kind of over here, and in all the high stress areas, but nothing nefarious in my opinion. But I looked at the old photos of my other Silverflow I had, and I would say that one had more finish checking, so knowing how this collection was stored, I think we got lucky on this one. He might not have owned it for too long. Or perhaps it's more of a story. They were stored correctly, but then he was like put in the hospital or something and wasn't able to care for his guitars. I'm just glad I got a few choice pieces out of that collection and was able to clean them up. So we got our Gibson Custom Shop logo, then our serial number. Kind of hard to read, but it's CS9648. So I compared it to my other one, and that was 9485. So that tells me this was probably made after all the other Silverflows, and they're like, hey, why don't we do an all Silverflow finish? Or maybe it was like an employee guitar or a dealer custom order. They wanted it to only be one of one. It's impossible to know. I suppose I could call up Gibson and ask them. They're usually pretty helpful for guitars 1989 and later. Anything before that, they're just kind of looking up on the internet to help you. All said and done, this one is just a hair over 8 pounds. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Man, you gotta love 90s era 57 classics. They just have a certain magicalness to them. They sound great, clean, and dirty. I find myself really fond of that middle position on cleans. now that we've gone with the flow, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Did I pay a little bit too much for it at the current market evaluation? Yeah, maybe a little bit. The bidding got crazy. I didn't want to miss out on this really cool piece, but I have absolutely zero regrets because it's a unique Les Paul Elegant for my collection and it matches my gold mummy very well. However, I lucked out. This thing is a massive player. It might not have been played a lot in its lifetime, but it's got that perfect balance of weight relief, not being too heavy on your back, but it still has all the tone. I just love 90s era 57 classics. There's just a certain charm to them that makes them awesome. So at the end of the day, if these things being chambered scares you, don't let it. It's different. Give them a try. However, maybe at the same time, don't try them because that's what makes elegants more expensive is people actually try them and go, hey, there might be something to this custom shop chambered stuff. So troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed getting to finally document this guitar. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you guys tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.